Good afternoon. Next topic is on heart failure. It is a case-based discussion. Actually, I'm Dr. Sandamali Premnaratne, my colleague Dr. Disnamaratunga. We were planning to do a very interactive session, but unfortunately, this one is going to be, it will be interactive to a certain degree. It is a case-based discussion, and there will appear some questions on the screen, and you have to go to the link that is provided to you, people who have joined online, and then you can vote for the best correct answer, and we can discuss accordingly. Can we have the slides, please? My first case is a 60-year-old patient who presented to the ETU with shortness of breath for 5 days duration. This patient has dry cough that was worse in the night also. He didn't have chest pain, history of chest pain or fever. Examination showed a very dyspneic patient, and he is tachycardic. Heart rate is around 110 beats per minute. Blood pressure is little bit on the low side, 100/70, and saturation is also low, 90%. He is afebrile. Temperature was normal, body temperature was normal. And on examination of the chest, there are bibasal crackles in both lung fields and few rhonchi. So question 1 is, what are the possible causes? A, acute exacerbation of bronchial asthma. B, heart failure. C, pneumonia. D, acute exacerbation of COPD. E, all of the above. Can we start voting now, please? You have to select the best possible answer for this. Now we are trying to recognize the differential diagnosis of possible causes of this patient who presents with shortness of breath and cough, who is tachycardic and tachypneic with low saturation. You will be given 30 seconds to vote. Can we have the results if they have finished voting? Okay, I'm sorry about that delay. So let's start. My first case is a 60-year-old patient who presented to the ETU with shortness of breath for 5 days duration. This patient has dry cough that was worse in the night also. He didn't have chest pain, history of chest pain or fever. Examination showed a very dyspneic patient, and he is tachycardic. Heart rate is around 110 beats per minute. Blood pressure is little bit on the low side, 100/70, and saturation is also low, 90%. He is afebrile. Temperature was normal, body temperature was normal. And on examination of the chest, there are bibasal crackles in both lung fields and few rhonchi. So question 1 is, what are the possible causes? A, acute exacerbation of bronchial asthma. B, heart failure. C, pneumonia. D, acute exacerbation of COPD. E, all of the above. Can we start voting now, please? You have to select the best possible answer for this. Now we are trying to recognize the differential diagnosis of possible causes of this patient who presents with shortness of breath and cough, who is tachycardic and tachypneic with low saturation. You will be given 30 seconds to vote. Can we have the results if they have finished voting? If it is taking time, I can skip that part. And sure. Sorry. Now our technical team is trying to get the results onto the presentation. Of course, you all have thought this is topic is on heart failure, so answers should be heart failure. It is correct, but at this moment, best answer is all of the above, because all these conditions can cause shortness of breath. All of them can have cough and can cause tachypnea, tachycardia, and low saturation. So my answer for this question is all of the above, but I don't find you wrong for answering this as heart failure. So, heart failure, the commonest presenting symptom is shortness of breath. I'm afraid most of our presentation will overlap with Dr. Dinesh Dharmavardhana's presentation, but I need to highlight few things. We need to, any patient who presents with shortness of breath, we need to not only to think about heart failure, there are several other causes that give rise to shortness of breath. It could be cardiac causes, or it could be causes due to lung problems, or could be due to any other problems. Common cardiac causes are conditions like myocardial infarction, pulmonary edema or acute left ventricular failure, any arrhythmias, tachy or bradyarrhythmias, and in the lungs, even asthma, COPD, pneumonia, pneumothorax, all these conditions can cause shortness of breath. So patients present with shortness of breath. When they present, we have to get the proper history and examine and do some investigations to identify which is the condition causing these symptoms. So, topic is heart failure. It is defined as a clinical syndrome that have typical symptoms and signs that is caused by either problem in the structure of the heart or the function of the heart, function of the heart being pumping action of the heart, and which results in reduced cardiac output. That means amount of blood that is ejected from the heart in a one cycle is reduced, or it could be elevated pressures inside the heart at rest or during stress, giving rise to these symptoms and signs. In simple word, it is a condition where heart that doesn't pump well to match the demand. So, heart failure not only presents with shortness of breath, there could be many other clinical features. You have listened to the previous, if you have listened to the previous lecture, you will be able to answer this question. So the question number 2 is, which one is not a clinical feature of heart failure? A, shortness of breath, B, fatigue, C, ankle swelling, D, abdominal distension, E, headache. Could you please vote now? Yes, absolutely correct. It's a very simple question. Of course, you don't get a headache with heart failure, but every other clinical sign or symptom can occur with heart failure. So what are the signs and symptoms that can happen with? So they commonly present with shortness of breath. And you have heard about these terms like orthopnea, paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea. We write in our bed tickets when we take the history. So all these symptoms and signs could be explained from pathophysiology of heart failure, but I don't want to go into that due to the time constraint. But what happens when the heart doesn't pump well to match the oxygen demand of the body, the body can sense that. And there are sensors located in various places. Then they signal the brain, asking the lungs to breathe rapidly so that the patient can get more oxygen. So that's why patients get breathlessness. In addition, when the heart doesn't pump well, blood accumulates inside the heart. That will increase the back pressure from the heart into the lungs, and there will be fluid accumulation in the lungs, in the liver, and in peripheries. That's why people get pulmonary edema, liver enlargement, and ankle edema. And all these other symptoms also can occur with heart failure. There are typical and less specific symptoms and signs, but out of these, common symptoms are shortness of breath and fatigue, ankle swelling, elevated JVP, and third heart sounds. After this, I will ask Dr. Disna to continue with the rest of the case.
Thank you, Sandamali. Now still we are dealing with the first patient, and now I'm going to put up the investigations for you to go for the proper diagnosis, because now you have gone through the history as well as, the clinical features, and this is the Now, this is this patient's ECG, right? So, now in this ECG, you know, you have to do the basic ECG analysis, whether it is, whether the patient is in sinus rhythm or whether the patient is in EF. And also you have to look at whether the patient is having signs of contributory factors for this clinical syndrome. Now, in this patient, most importantly, a patient is in AF, and in addition to that, patient is having ST elevations in AVR as well as significant ST depressions in lateral leads as well as inferior leads. So this suggestive of significant ischemia going on. And this is the next investigation. This is the chest x-ray of this patient, and I hope that you will appreciate that the, you know, the x-ray features, the radiographical features of the heart failure, where you will get the alveolar edema, so that you will get the pulmonary edema and this Batwin's appearance. In addition to that, patient also will have curly B lines, as you all know. And the next investigation will be now in this patient we have done the full blood count, and the hemoglobin is 11.5 and the serum creatinine is 1 grams per deciliter. Serum electrolytes, potassium and sodium are within normal limits. So the CRP value is less than 6, so the infection is little unlikely, and high sensitive troponin is grossly elevated. And now we'll move into the question number 3. And now, with all these investigations in your hand, with the clinical history and the presentation, which would be the cause of heart failure in this patient? Now you can start the voting. Response A, pneumonia. B, NSTEMI. C, CKD-related cardiomyopathy. D, myocarditis due to leptospirosis. E, none of the above. You are given 30 seconds for the responses. Okay, the time is up, and can we have the results on the screen if possible? Yes. Okay, now we'll go through one by one because there are several, significant responses. Okay, now if you take this pneumonia and if you go through that, in this patient, the clinical history is suggestive of all these differential diagnoses. But if you look at the investigation, especially the CRP value is less than 6, and this patient's troponin is grossly elevated, and because of that, the most likely diagnosis here is NSTEMI. And pneumonia, generally, the CRP will be, I expect the CRP to go high. And the CKD-related cardiomyopathy, I know that you have appreciated that the creatinine level is normal in this patient. So as the myocarditis due to leptospirosis also in up to this grade of heart failure, to get this grade of heart failure, and there has to be some sort of like renal derangement. So the best possible answer here is the NSTEMI. Now we'll move into the features of the causes of heart failure. Now the ischemic heart disease is a well-known cause. The reason being that because of the ischemia, the part of the heart or the heart muscle which is affected by the ischemic insult will be either malfunction or non-function. Because of that, the pumping action of the heart is damaged, and this will cause for heart failure. And in addition to that, as we all have discussed, the cardiomyopathies, dilated cardiomyopathy, peripartum cardiomyopathy, and the hypertension is also a significant cause for heart failure. And as you all know, that the valvular and structural heart disease, the mitral stenosis, aortic stenosis, and all the mitral regurgitation, aortic regurgitation, as well as the intracardiac shunts especially can cause heart failure. In addition to that, the pericardial diseases like constrictive pericarditis, also a well-known cause of heart failure. That is mainly because of it, it affects the relaxation capacity of the heart as well as the pumping capacity. In addition to that, the arrhythmias, the tachyarrhythmias as well as the bradyarrhythmias can cause heart failure. And as you all know, the alcohol is a well-known toxic, and there are some drugs and heavy metals as well as radiation also comes under the topic of toxin mediated causes for the heart failure. In addition to that, we identify some causes with infection related. The bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and all these viruses also can cause infectious related cardiac failure in an immune mediated one, especially with autoimmune diseases, and sometimes the infiltrative cardiomyopathy is also identified, the malignancies and the amyloidosis, all those things we have discussed in the previous lecture. And in addition to that, the hormonal derangement, the thyroid diseases, diabetes, and when it comes to nutritional deficiency, thiamine deficiency as well as the selenium deficiency, also well known for heart failure. High output status, especially the anemia and thyrotoxicosis as well as the sepsis can cause heart failure. And now when it comes to the investigation related to the, when it comes to the diagnosis of the heart failure, the mainstay of diagnosis is, first thing is to assess the clinical symptoms as well as the signs. In addition to that, we have other investigations including echocardiogram as well as the ECGs and the chest x-rays, and also the biomarkers like BNP levels. And now, when it comes to the heart failure, now the terminology, I think it's very important to know something about this terminology of the heart failure, because according to new guidelines, they have introduced the various levels of heart failure or the various groups of heart failure. Now, the first group is the heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. So that is, the ejection fraction is less than 40%. And the second group is the heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. So that is the ejection fraction more than 50%. And the third category is the heart failure with mid-range ejection fraction, where the ejection fraction in between 40 to 49. So the importance of this knowing this terminology is, sometimes you will find, now you have treated a patient in the ward suspecting a heart failure clinically, but when the patient goes for the echocardiogram, sometimes the echo will say that the ejection fraction of this patient is 60%, but you are very sure that the patient presented with features of heart failure, and you have treated heart failure clinically, and you have given furosemide and other medication as per heart failure, and patient got improved. So that means even though the ejection fraction is 60%, yes, you are correct, and this patient is having heart failure. And so what are the important features that we are going to find out from echocardiogram? You can assess the systolic function as we had described. It is important to know the ejection fraction. In addition to that, the diastolic dysfunction is also very important part of this, because most of the patient with this preserved ejection fraction will have diastolic dysfunction. In addition to that, with the help of echocardiogram, we can assess the presence of other structural abnormalities, the wall thickness as well as the valve function, wall thickness when it comes to the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or whether the chamber sizes to find out whether the patient is having dilated cardiomyopathy. So all this information as well as the muscle cardiomyopathy. So all these informations we can gather from echocardiogram. And these BNP levels are now in new guidelines. Actually, this has given a very good importance, because this is a biomarker used in the diagnosis of heart failure, and but generally in the presence of normal plasma BNP concentrations, the patient is unlikely to have heart failure, but that means there are other conditions where the BNP levels are elevated, like in renal failure, atrial fibrillation, and also in elderly population, you can have slightly elevated BNP levels, but when it comes to the heart failure, generally they are grossly elevated. And in addition to that, what are the other basic investigations that need to be done in heart failure? So we have discussed the echocardiogram, now the ECG. Now you should have and understand why should we do these basic investigations. One thing is to assess the clinical status of the patient as well as assess the hemodynamic stability. In addition to that, this is very important to assess the diagnosis or to go in for a diagnosis. So the first baseline investigation would be the ECG as well as the chest X-ray. In addition to that, it's very important to perform the biochemical investigations that can help in diagnosing of the disease, and as well as these the biomedical investigation can help you to to titrate your treatment as well. So we have to do the renal function test as well as the liver function test, fasting blood sugar, lipid profile, thyroid profile, as well as the serum ferritin. This thyroid profile is very important because we know that the patients with hyperthyroidism as well as hypothyroidism, they are liable to get heart failure. So doing that test, we can have some clue. In addition to that, the serum ferritin levels are also important. And the hematological, that is the full, especially the full blood count, because sometimes the anemia, in anemia you can get high output cardiac failure. So in addition to that, there are specific investigations, including cardiac MRI. This cardiac MRI will help you to assess the left ventricular function as well as to identify the underlying cause, and as well as it also can help to identify as well as assess the viability of the myocardium. In addition to that, doing coronary angiogram is also important. That is mainly to delineate the coronary anatomy as well as the presence of ischemic insult, because if the correctable causes are there, then we can address that. In addition to that, the CT coronary angiogram is also important. That is especially when it comes to the diagnosis of coronary anomaly as well as in the population of intermediate probability of coronary artery disease. And then we'll move into the case number 2. So this now a 62-year-old patient presented to the clinic with shortness of breath for 3 months duration. Now this patient is coming with a history of this ongoing history for 3 months. His pulse rate is 84 beats per minute. His blood pressure is 180 by 100 mercury millimeter, and the saturation fairly normal, it's 98%, and chest X-ray is normal. So this is this patient's ECG, right? And so the ECG, you can appreciate that there are lateral ST, the patient is in sinus rhythm, and the ST depressions in lateral leads as well as the T inversions. And also patient, the ECG criteria has met the criteria for the diagnosis of LVH. And in this patient, the echocardiogram, left ventricular function is normal, as well as the heart chamber sizes are normal, and the patient is having concentric LVH with severe diastolic dysfunction, and his BNP levels are also elevated. Now with this clinical scenario, we'll move into the next question. So you all can start the voting now. What is the diagnosis of this patient? First thing is heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. B, acute NSTEMI. 3, heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. D, heart failure with mid-range ejection fraction. E, none of the above. You can start the voting now. You will be given 30 seconds. Okay, the time is up, and can we have the results on the screen, please? Yes, as the majority of you correctly pointed out, the answer is heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. Okay, from next slide, Dr. Sandamali will continue.
Okay. We move into case number 3. I have to go quickly now because we have run out of time now. It is a 44-year-old male patient presenting to ETU with acute shortness of breath for 2 hours duration. Patient is dyspneic, he is tachycardic, blood pressure is stable, he is severely hypoxic, and there are lung signs by basal crackers. This is the ECG. Please have a quick look. I think this ECG was seen in the previous lecture also, so it will be easy for you. And question 5, which one is a component of initial management in ETU? A, connect to the cardiac monitor and give oxygen. B, IV furosemide. C, IV GTN. D, loading doses of aspirin, clopidogrel and statin. E, all of the above. Please start voting now. You all have gone through this stuff before in the previous lectures, so it will be easy now for you. Okay. All right, majority has said that connect to the cardiac monitor and give oxygen. Actually, answer should be all of the above, because this patient comes to the ETU. You can't just put the patient on monitor and wait. You have to manage the patient. So you need to give furosemide, give GTN, and because this patient has ST elevation in ECG, it is anterior ST elevation myocardial infarction, so need to give loading doses of aspirin, clopidogrel and statin in the ETU itself. Right, so we come to the management of patients in ETU who comes with acute heart failure. I will quickly go through these things. First, we have to stabilize the patient. So easiest way is to go through A, B, C. A is for airway. You have to maintain the airway because these patients have increased secretions due to heart failure. Suck the airway and clear it, and maintain breathing, maintain oxygenation level. If with oxygen, if the saturation does not improve or if the patient is in respiratory distress, you have to start non-invasive positive pressure ventilation with CPAP and BiPAP. If it is still not responding, and if there is impending respiratory failure, need to prepare for intubation and start ambu ventilation. C is for circulation. You need to maintain perfusion to maintain blood flow to the important organs like brain and kidneys. And if the blood pressure is low, you have to give inotrope support. And if there are any arrhythmias causing impeding the perfusion, they need to correct them. And in the ETU itself, we need to take basic investigations, need to do basic investigations, including blood investigations, most importantly, blood sugar levels. And this would be the first presentation of diabetes, we may never know, and do the ECG chest X-ray as highlighted by Dr. Disna. And we need to identify the cause, like the ST elevation MI in this patient, and treat accordingly. And then there's a flow chart that at the initial stage, we need to treat cardiogenic shock and respiratory failure. Once that is sorted, we need to look for the acute etiology where that we need to act urgently, like acute coronary syndrome, hypertensive emergencies, arrhythmias, and pulmonary embolism. Once these causes are excluded, then we need to treat heart failure and confirm the other underlying etiologies and correct them. So there are a few drugs we used in acute heart failure. That we say that we use drugs to reduce preload and afterload. Preload means that amount of blood that comes into the heart, and because of that inside heart there is increased intracardiac pressures. That pressure is reduced by intravenous furosemide, and afterload is reduced because if afterload is the pressure against which the heart has to pump, and if a heart is already failing, that load will not be tolerated by the heart. So the afterload is reduced by vasodilators like GTN. And we use some medications to improve perfusion. You heard in the morning about cardiogenic shock. So we use inotropes and vasopressors to improve perfusion. And we use drugs to treat underlying causes. As I told you, for MI, antiplatelet, statin, and thrombolysis for ST elevation MI, anticoagulation for non-ST elevation MI. And if this is sepsis-related heart failure, you need to give IV antibiotics. And there are medications that are known to improve mortality in patients with heart failure. These were also already discussed. ACE inhibitors like enalapril, AR blockers like candesartan, losartan, and beta blockers like carvedilol and bisoprolol, ivabradine, and mineralocorticoid inhibitors like spironolactone, and these new group of drugs called neprilysin inhibitors. And we use some other drugs to control arrhythmia because arrhythmia can be detrimental in acute heart failure. Those are examples are digoxin in atrial fibrillation, amiodarone in arrhythmias like VT. So this patient received antiplatelets and statins and thrombolysis because it is acute anterior ST elevation myocardial infarction and IV diuretics. He also had to undergo rescue PCI because thrombolysis failed, but patient is stable on day 5 and ready to be discharged. So now we are going into the long-term management of the heart failure. Question number 6, we will quickly finish this one. Which drug is not prescribed routinely on discharge? Aspirin, clopidogrel, atorvastatin, spironolactone, ibuprofen. Please select the best response. And I will give you only 15 seconds to do that. Okay, until the results come up, if it is taking time, I will go into the next slide. Answer is actually ibuprofen, because it is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, which is not used in heart failure. Every other drug is used, especially in this patient, because patient had ST elevation myocardial infarction and heart failure. These drugs are used. Ibuprofen is not used. Correct. Well done. You all have voted well. Right. Okay. So in hospital care for patients with heart failure, when the patient is admitted and we have managed him in the ETU, what do we do after he comes to the ward or CCU? There are general measures that need to be taken. We need to advise the patient regarding level of activity. Can we mobilize this patient immediately after heart failure? We can, provided the patient is stable. If the patient's saturation is maintained, blood pressure is maintained, not in tachycardia or not having any arrhythmia, the patient should be gradually mobilized into at least usual level of activity. And then the diet, you need to be concerned about the level of amount of salt that is being given, because too much salt can be detrimental in heart failure. If the patient tolerates, patient can receive a normal diet. And also, it's very, very important to monitor the patient in acute time period, including hemodynamics, heart rate, blood pressure and saturation, and also urine output. And it is very, very important to maintain proper fluid balance chart. These are the initial parameters that we need to consider if the patient deteriorates. These parameters will help us. And then we establish the specific treatment, like in ischemia, we need to treat ischemic heart disease. Treatment of underlying cause, and we need to establish specific treatment of heart failure with diuretics, ACE inhibitors and beta blockers, and then treat underlying cause. Because of the lack of time, we will stop at this moment, and I'm sorry, due to technical problem, we had to stop it halfway. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for interacting with us.